A Course in Miracles, a transcription of the shorthand notes manuscripts of Helen Schucman, text volume. The value of the atonement does not lie in the manner in which it is expressed. In fact, if it is truly used, it will inevitably be expressed in whatever way is most helpful to the receiver, not the giver. This means that a miracle, to attain its full efficacy, must be expressed in a language which the recipient can understand without fear. It does not follow by any means that this is the highest level of communication of which he is capable, but it does mean that it is the highest level of communication of which he is capable now. Uh, so, um, everything is about relationship and communication. Everything is about communication. In ACIM, nothing is about the body, more or less. I mean, the body can be a healthy, serviceable instrument through which someone lives until they lay it down at the end of their life. But, by and large, everything is about communication, the mind, not being a body is the major idea in ACIM. Um, Communication, learning, growing. I mean, it is a process to uh, uh, gain the atonement, or the atonement. Same thing as enlightenment, oneness with God. Jesus at his baptism, the atonement, salvation. There's other terms for it in ACIM, and you know, you know, perfect oneness with God in terms of peace, joy, strength, goodness. An intense and burning love of God is what has to be developed. So as that's being developed, that's the growth process. Reading from the notes of Helen Schucman, the whole aim of the miracle is to raise the level of communication, not to impose regression as improperly used upon it. Before it is safe to let miracle workers loose in this world, it is essential that they understand fully the fear of release. Otherwise, they may unwittingly foster the misbelief that release is imprisonment, which is very prevalent. This misperception arose from the attempted protection device or misdefense that harm can be limited to the body. This was because of the much greater fear which this one counteracts, that the mind can hurt itself. Neither error is really meaningful because the miscreations of the mind do not really exist. That recognition is a far better protection device than any form of level confusion because of the advantages of introducing correction at the level of the error. So, any thought that's not perfect, peace, joy, strength, love, goodness, kindness, tenderness, um, is an ego thought. So, an ego thought has remorse, disappointment, sorrow, anxiety, uncertainty. The merest frown is an ego way of being. So, zero negative emotions, 100% of peace, joy, strength, goodness, kindness, tenderness in every thought, leading to every word, leading to every action. But it's a mistake to think that a lie, the ego being a lie, is not strong. That's another sentence in the book. So, ego beliefs, which lead to negative emotions, um, and that includes any resentments of any kind, any angers of any kind. None of them should ever be present if someone is living in their capital S self, their Christ-like self, their Jesus-like self. So, um, but ego beliefs can be very strong. They have to be undone. Um, you, or anyone has to initiate the process of having them undone by fully cooperating with the Holy Spirit in ACIM terms, or the thought adjuster in Urantia terms, Urantia, URANTIA, but cooperating with the Spirit of God within us so that ego beliefs are undone, gone, completely gone. Ego beliefs return to the nothingness that they were. They're not real. They don't actually exist in the sense that they're not the will of God, therefore they don't actually exist. Ego beliefs are something that a person makes, would be the ACIM idea, whereas creating is living in the God mind, would be overall how ACIM uses the words make and create. Level confusion, there's two levels: the spirit level, the mind, the spirit mind level, and the physical level. That's the two levels, and all the problems come from the physical level. Problems about being a body. So, and something, there's a few sentences in the book about, correction has to be brought to the level where correction is needed. So that's why, the Holy Spirit is present to help people get out of identifying as a body and body pleasures and body impulses and such. Reading from the notes of Helen Schucman, ACIM, it is essential that the remembrance of the fact that only mind can create at all remain with you. Implicit in this is the corollary that correction belongs at the thought level and not at either level to which creation is inapplicable. To repeat an earlier statement and also to extend it somewhat, the soul, capital S soul, is already perfect and therefore does not require correction. The body does not really exist except as a learning device for the mind. This learning device is not subject to errors of its own because it was created, but is not creating. It should be obvious then that correcting the creator or inducing it to give up miscreation is the only application of creation which is inherently meaningful at all. Implicit in this, so everything's about the thought level and not at either level to which creation is inapplicable. I mean, either level to me would be ego beliefs. That would be the thought level of ego beliefs, or physical things, bodies, incorrect beliefs about the body, concerning the body. That would be the two levels. So ACIM is saying our capital S self, our Jesus-like mind, is already there in our minds. There are definitely sentences in the book that say the God mind for every person is at the center of their mind. So there are exercises about getting to the center of the mind in terms of the God mind, perfect peace, joy, strength, etc. And there is other information about uh, the God mind for anyone is at the center of their mind, and the ego mind surrounding that is what has to be undone, um, so that all thoughts are only coming from the God mind, resulting only in perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect strength, perfect loveness, perfect goodness, perfect all of it. So there's another sentence in the book about the body should not feel at all. So there should never be any discomfort in the physical body, never, aside from serious illnesses, um, but no uncomfortability in the body ever, not for one moment. If my mind is pure, if your mind is pure, if anybody's mind is pure, there's no physical upsets going on at all. In terms of body uncomfortability, zero, like nothing anywhere in the body. That's what ACIM is saying. That's a truth. So the body does nothing of itself. It's always the mind that is doing things. That's just something that's a very important message ACIM gets across over and over again. Different ways, different sentences, different parts of the book. It's on a regular basis, I believe it's bringing up that idea that the mind is doing everything, the body is not doing anything. ACIM, we said before that magic is essentially mindless or the destructive, miscreated use of mind. Physical medicines are a form of spells. In one way, they are a more benign form in that they do not entail the possession fallacy, which does enter when a mind believes that it can possess another. Since this is considerably less dangerous, though still incorrect, it has its advantages. It is particularly helpful to the therapist who really wants to heal but is still fearful himself. By using physical means to do so, he is not engaging in any form of enslavement, even though he is not applying the atonement. This means that his mind is dulled by fear, but is not actively engaged in distortion. So, I mean, the book does have a couple, well, maybe one place where it's generous towards the medical field, where it says something about, if you need something medical, do it. Otherwise there's too much fear present. I'm paraphrasing, but there's at least one sentence in the book about that. But in general, I mean, the book is being very clear. If the mind is pure in terms of God-like, Jesus-like, then there is absolutely no physical illness going on. It says it a lot of times, a lot of different places in the book. Um, so, towards the end here, so a mind dulled by fear but is not actively engaged in distortion. So thinking about the wrong thing. If I you or anyone is thinking about doing something that would bring remorse, disappointment, sorrow, guilt feelings, anxiety, any of it. Um, uh, so, I mean, so the goal is, ACIM talks about it, stop the mind wandering. I do not want to think about things that could bring guilt feelings of any kind. ACIM, one sentence in the book, the attraction of guilt opposes the attraction of God. So God, being love, joy, peace, the goal is to develop an intense and burning love of God and know God's intense and burning love for you. So that's the goal. So the attraction to anything that's not perfect peace, perfect joy is fear. And fear would be an unpleasant emotion. So zero unpleasant emotions is our capital S self, our real self, our Christ-like self, our God-like self. So, um, uh, so something about an ACIM, um, uh, to act on something that I know is wrong. In ACIM, it talks about right-minded and wrong-minded. So it doesn't use the word moral, but that's what it's talking about. So if I do what is moral, um, I'm going to stay in peace, joy, strength, goodness. If I do what is immoral or the wrong mindedness, then I'm going to experience remorse, disappointment, sorrow. And ACIM is saying, our Jesus like selves, our capital S self, never, not for one moment, goes to anything outside of perfect peace, supremely happy, perfect joy, perfect strength. Never, not for one moment, is there ever the slightest uncertainty, doubt, anxiety, mental upset of any kind. And so, yeah, so the goal is to not even think about things that could bring a negative emotion. That's the real goal. The real goal is to never even think about things that could bring a negative emotion. Then it's over. If you can't think it, you can't do it. So if I can't think about doing something that would bring a negative emotion, I can't do it. So that's the real goal, the real purification of the mind. Like in the manual for teachers, it says, not one thought opposes any other thought. Nothing you say is contradicted by what you think or do. That's the place to get to in terms of Jesus, like ACIM. Those who are afraid oh, of using the mind to heal are right in avoiding it, because the very fact that they are afraid has made them vulnerable To miscreation, they are therefore likely to misunderstand any healing they might induce, and because egocentricity and fear usually occur together, may be unable to accept the real capitalist source of the healing. Under these conditions, it is safer for them to rely temporarily on physical healing devices because they cannot misperceive them as their own creations. As long as their own vulnerability persists, it is essential to perceive them from even attempting, preserve them from even attempting miracles. So here ACIM is giving acknowledgement to not living up to its high ideas by saying what it says here. But it's always about the mind. There's a sense in the book about you are responsible for your thoughts. What is that? Um, I don't know. There's a short little and anything that seems to happen, I created. Anyway, there's four sentences about that, but the idea simply is the mind is the creator at all times. You create your own reality through the nature of your beliefs, would be how Seth would put it in the Seth books by Jane Roberts. But it's always about 100% responsibility for what's going on in my life. In whatever's going on in one's life, 100% responsibility for what's going on. Zero victim mentality in any way whatsoever. Zero resentments in any way. Zero feelings of deprivation. Zero grievances. All of that has to be zero in terms of our capital S self, our Christ-like self, God-like self. So, um, uh, so here's one of those sentences where it says, go ahead and use the medical field. If you're not able to understand that you heal yourself with your mind. Um, I mean, there are practical realities to the medical field, of course. ACIM. We said in a previous section that the miracle is an expression of miracle mindedness. Miracle mindedness merely means right mindedness in the sense that we are now using it. Right mindedness neither exalts nor depreciates the mind of the miracle worker nor of the miracle receiver. However, as a creative act, the miracle need not await the right mindedness of the receiver. In fact, its purpose is to restore him to his right mind, but it is essential that the miracle worker be in his right mind, or he will be unable to reestablish right mindedness in someone else. Miracle mindedness, right mindedness, the mind can be right or wrong, is something talked about in this book. So, right mindedness is always, every moment is perfect joy, perfect peace, supremely happy, perfect strength, perfect kindness, perfect patience, perfect understanding. That's what every moment is, moment to moment, in terms of every thought, leading to every word, leading to every action. Um, so the miracle undoes the ego mind and brings the God mind into full awareness. Jesus at his baptism, living that way, moment to moment about everything. Everything is about relationship. There's a sense in the book about relationships are not used by you at all. They are used only by the Holy Spirit, and that's what keeps them pure. So everything is about the will of God. Everything, every moment to moment, is about the will of the first person of the Trinity. So in terms of relationships, I'm not doing anything in any relationship at any time. It's purely, how does God or the Holy Spirit want me to be in that relationship in terms of thoughts, words, actions, any of it. Everything is about relationship. Nothing is about yourself. This book has strong sentences against selfishness in any way. Um, all right, ACIM. The healer who relies on his own readiness is endangering his understanding. He is perfectly safe as long as he is completely unconcerned about his readiness, but maintains a consistent trust in mind, capital letters, mind, the word mind. Errors of this kind produce some very erratic behavior, which usually point up an underlying unwillingness to cooperate. Note that by inserting the carbon backwards, Bill uh, his own willingness to give, these errors inevitably introduce inefficiency into the miracle worker's behavior and temporarily disrupt his miracle mindedness. We might also make very similar comments about your own hesitation about dictating at all. This is a larger error only because it results in greater inefficiency. If you don't say anything, nobody can use it, including me. We have established that for all corrective processes, the first step is know that this is fear. Unless fear had entered, the corrective procedure would never have become necessary. If your miracle working propensities are not working, it is always because fear has intruded on your right mindedness and has literally upset it, that is, turned it upside down. So, especially early in the book, there's a lot of first person Jesus in here. So, the author of this book equates himself to Jesus, equating that to the Holy Spirit, equating that to God Himself, the Spirit of God within us. They're all the same idea or the same spiritual force or beings working with us to undo our ego minds and live in the God mind. Some of this is very personal to Helen, not channeled material, just something Helen is writing down, um, especially early in the book. So fear. I mean, to me, a simple definition of fear is an unpleasant emotion. Any unpleasant emotion of any kind should never be present. That includes loneliness. There's a sentence in this book about God is lonely without his sons. Well, God. So then the idea is, until someone is living in their perfect joy, perfect peace, perfect strength, as a human being, God is lonely because he doesn't know that person, completely. So God is lonely until people live in their perfect godlike selves. There's definitely a sense in the book about that. Of course, at the same time, God has no fear. So God has no unpleasant emotions. So as I let go of all loneliness and live in nothing but an intense and burning love of God, so that I'm not lonely at all, then God's loneliness also goes away. Um, but for me, I have to let go of all my fear to live in an intense and burning love of God, and have no loneliness, whereas God never has any fear. So this book says, quite a few times about upside down thinking. The exact opposite of the truth about any subject is upside down thinking. So, um, uh, defense attack mentality would be upside down thinking. There's a lesson in the workbook about in my defenselessness, my safety lies. So this is all about being 100% defenseless, helpless in terms of attitude. Be as a newborn, in terms of your way of approaching every moment. Be as a newborn. 100% defenselessness is how to be. Jesus said, be born again. Um, that's the idea for that. So any belief that is not perfect joy, peace, strength is the opposite of the correct belief about whatever the subject is. Reading from the notes of Helen Schucman, ACIM, all forms of not right-mindedness are the result of refusal to accept the atonement for yourself. If the miracle worker does accept it, he places himself in the position to recognize that those who need to be healed are simply those who have not done so. The reason why you felt the vast radiation range of your own inner illumination is because you were aware that your right-mindedness is healing. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept atonement himself. This means that he knows that mind is the only creative level and that its errors are healed by the atonement. Once he accepts this, his mind can only heal. By denying his mind any destructive potential and reinstating its purely constructive powers, he has placed himself in a position where he can undo the level confusion of others. The message which he then gives to others is the truth that their minds are really similarly constructive and that their own miscreations cannot hurt them. By affirming this, the miracle worker releases the mind from over-evaluating its own learning device, the body, and restores the mind to its true position as the learner. It should be re-emphasized that the body does not learn any more than it creates. As a learning device, it merely follows the learner. But if it is falsely endowed with self-initiative, it becomes a serious obstruction to the learning it should facilitate. So the only goal for anyone, whether it's consciously known or unconsciously true, is that um, oneness with God in terms of living like God, the first person of the Trinity, as a part of God, as an individual person, living in perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect strength, perfect goodness, perfect morality, perfect virtuousness, perfect righteousness, perfect sinlessness, perfect holiness, perfect purity, perfect blamelessness, etc., etc. Like living that way is everyone's only goal, whether it's conscious or not. So again, the growth process of healing the mind to the point of Jesus at his baptism, where Jesus, was fully living perfectly in the God mind, and from Jesus's baptism on, he was living perfectly um, in the God mind. Gautama Siddhartha Buddha also achieved what real enlightenment is. Um, um, so here's a sense about, you know, uh, he then gives to others the truth that their minds are really similarly constructive. So truth is the same for everybody. That's in ACIM. The one sentence it says it is um, in the laws of chaos. It says uh, a law of chaos is that the truth is different for everybody, um, saying that the truth is the same for everybody. So this includes everything. There's a truth to every physical behavior. There's a falsehood to every physical behavior. So there's a truth to every physical behavior, which will result in perfect peace, joy, strength, goodness, love, a godlike mind. And there's a falsehood to every physical behavior, which will bring remorse, disappointment, sorrow, or some other negative emotion. And that's true for all spiritual beliefs, all beliefs about anything. There is a truth, there is a falsehood. The truth is all those positive emotions, believing, living, doing, talking. What is false about anything results in negative emotions. Um, the ego mind is a temporary problem because it has to be undone. The time someone wants to take to undo their ego mind and live in perfect peace, joy, strength is up to them. But the ego mind does have to be undone. So that idea is in the introduction to ACIM. The time someone takes to live in what is perfect peace, joy, strength about everything, every moment, moment to moment, is up to them. The undoing of the ego mind does have to take place.